I wonder why our EP Dan season ticket holder to the Los Angeles Clippers couldn't make it to the studio right now.
I think it's the same reason why I sent out a search party to make sure that you were all right a couple of weeks ago. Remember when it was on, it was the Twitter moments that Porzingis is considered being traded?
Another clip today. Chris Paul was traded to the Rockets.
That's
after the Rockets. See, now here's what's funny, man. You start reading yesterday, like you can't take any report too seriously, but when it says like the Rockets are super interested in signing Chris Paul and are really making a threat to sign Chris Paul, now I feel like everything I read about any serious threat is like gonna be real. Yeah. Because the immediate thing I read after is Paul George is now a serious consideration for the Rockets if they have anything they could trade. But as for the Chris Paul thing, here's the bad take. They can't share a backcourt. Yeah, they can, guys, and it's gonna work out. It's gonna work wonders. First of all, Chris Paul hasn't had an X's and O's coach or somebody who really has been able to run offensive plays the best possible way to fit at least James Harden's style of play. Sure, there'll be an adjustment. Sure, the Rockets won't be 17-0 to start the season, but Chris Paul's the point guard here, and James Harden kind of goes back to being the number 2, so more off-ball movement. But as for the trade itself, let's get to the details of the trade. So that's element number 8, because the Clippers got something in return, and this is part of what I would believe makes Jerry West. It's also good on Chris Paul for letting management know. So he was gonna opt in to his contract. I'm sorry, he's gonna opt out of his contract. Decided to opt in for that last year, so they can do basically a sign and trade. And the Clippers get Patrick Beverley, Sam Dekker, Lou Williams, a 2018 first-round pick. They also have J.J. Redick, Raymond Felton, and Jamal Crawford still on the roster. They have too many guards. So now I want to safely assume that I think J.J. Redick's going to leave in free agency. And at some point you might want to say like, okay, maybe you get it where like Raymond Felton, he's aging. But it could have been nothing. Chris Paul could have said, nah, no, I'm opting out. I'm going to go play for the Rockets and you guys get nothing in return.
The thing that I'm most curious about is why is all these articles or automatically, if you see it, talking about whether or not Chris Paul is going to fit in with James Harden and how that will work? Not one article, I know it's just recently been released. My headline would be Chris Paul teams up with Mike D'Antoni, because that's what the main fit is right here, regardless of what James Harden does, because James Harden, I know, is greedy in the sense that he likes obviously to take most of those shots, but he also is working with a veteran point guard who gets the most out of players that he plays with. He literally is, if DeAndre Jordan was to have won an Oscar in the acting field, he would absolutely have to cut that thing into different quarters and give most of them to Chris Paul. Why would he cut it into quarters? Why would he not just give him the whole thing, Jason? I don't know.
Now that we're down that road, what movie did DeAndre Jordan act in the future that he wins an Oscar for?
The one that was, it picked up from the story in State Farm, where he came down with all the rings. And Chris Paul said, "You ain't got no rings."
DeAndre Jordan is a troubled housewife looking to rebuild her future.
So, despite that being the worst comparison you'll ever hear in any sort of show, I'll admit that. It's all to do with how Chris Paul is able to adapt and get the most out of people. And you're right, Doc Rivers, I don't think has ever drawn up a play that says, let's utilize one of the best point guards in the league and let's see if we can try and find a way to get him either the rock in the last quarter more so than Blake Griffin, or to try and get him to take a shot, because we know that he's got the ability to do so. But with James Harden now, in my head, what it's going to work is a little bit more versatile. Like, yeah, Chris Paul is going to be the point guard undoubtedly, but James Harden will take, in my opinion, a lot more of a LeBron James role. The way he plays with the Cavs is like, yeah, he's not exactly going to be taking point every time if Kyrie decides to take a point himself, but he's still going to be instrumental in the forefront of that attack. And I'm excited to see the big three in James Harden, Chris Paul, and Mike D'Antoni.
In addition to it, Clint Capella's come back to the Rockets, correct? Clint Capella in the pick and roll with just James Harden was devastating. So now you just upgraded the passing ability of your point guard. So a lot of people have questioned, you know, both of these guys are ball dominant players, which we know this. Actually, James Harden, in the numbers ran for last year, held the ball longer than Chris Paul did, and I didn't think anybody held the ball longer than Chris Paul did, just based on watching. So now D'Antoni gets a little bit of a challenge in I would say setting up plays that maybe he'll have to slow it down just a little bit, because Chris Paul's a patient player, and I think there's going to be a compromise somewhere between the coaching and the players, because Chris Paul's one of the highest IQ players in the league. James Harden's up there too. And the Rockets, just the year over year, remember last year, this time, Kevin Durant on 4th of July morning wakes up and he's a Golden State Warrior and the Warriors have won the title already, and that actually turned out to be true.
I was in Mexico at that point. I remember
Mexico,
the whole world was going crazy.
Right, the world's blowing up. Who cares about the NBA? The Warriors just won the title for the next 3 or 4 years. I still think the Warriors are the best team in the NBA. I still think they're actually gonna win the title next year. But now you have a Jimmy Butler potentially signing Kyle Lowry is in the sights for the Timberwolves, which we'll get to in another clip in itself anyway. Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins, which makes the Timberwolves a legitimate threat in the Western Conference. The Spurs are always a legitimate threat in the Western Conference. The Rockets were the 3 seed.
Yeah. And
they just picked up the best point guard in the NBA. And please don't argue that, because he is the best point guard in the NBA. Though if you're gonna do score first guys, I get where the separation becomes Curry, Westbrook, Harden, blah, 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 blah. You just picked up a top 8 player. Like, they have 2 of the top 8 players in the league. That's a good combo to have. And a bunch of young guys who can play minutes and run on that Rockets team. But so, that's the Rockets. Let's see, Lonzo Ball, according to his father, is taking the Lakers to the playoffs. So a legitimate threat in the Western Conference, that's a joke. The Clippers, probably not too much. The Jazz are still gonna come back with one of the best defensive centers in the league. The Western Conference is going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah.
So whoever emerges from there, who I still think is the Warriors, it's gonna take a lot to get through some of these teams.
Yeah.
And poor Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum sitting there going, we're still fighting, we're still the underdog, and we're still going to make the goddamn All-Star team next year. Why don't any of these guys go to the East? I'm just thinking, like, why not Chris Paul think like, screw it, I'm going to the Heat.
I thought he would have made one of 2 moves, and it was either going to the San Antonio Spurs if they can make room for him, or going to the Rockets.
You didn't think you really didn't think that he was going to sign with the Clippers.
I thought
it was 50-50. That like I thought, like, yeah, it's so much money because he's leaving like $50 million on the table.
But this is why I respect him.
He doesn't need. Look, I think now at this point, what we've seen with Durant, with Chris Paul, with the superstars, if you want to win, man, you leave the money on the table.
And that's why I said that. I think it was a few clips back where it's like, people still look at things through the lens of the team they love, and they think that those players may share that same sense of loyalty, and that loyalty is often backed up by money. But these players don't want to go down as not just not winning a title, but not even having a shot. Like, Chris Paul hasn't been to an NBA Finals.
He hasn't been to a Western
He hasn't been to a Western Conference Finals. So if you, like, and this is the difference, no one out there will say anything about Chris Paul making this move. They won't call him a traitor, blah, blah, blah. And I get it, it's not in the same vein as Kevin Durant, but if Kevin Durant didn't get to the NBA Finals and was so close to winning with OKC, people probably wouldn't say that he was a traitor for going to the Golden State Warriors. It was because he was so close. But as I continue to reiterate, even if you are there, sometimes the team is just so far superior than you, even though the Heat weren't that year, it hurts, and you want to try and acquire that trophy. So that's why I never really said anything about Kevin Durant. But to go back about Chris Paul, one last thing is, you're combining, as you mentioned, the best point guard in the league. Pass first, yes. He looks for players to get open looks. James Harden had an just mind-blowing season last year. Offensively, was just dominant. And now you're combining a guy with a coach that, courtesy of a great article on SB Nation that I was looking at this morning, has worked wonders in the past with point guards. Yeah. Chris Paul's already, and in my opinion, reached that level that, is he going to get any better? I don't know, but he's going to be more. He's got a coach that's going to be smarter with him, and he's not going to look to push him so far that the guy gets injured towards the end of the playoffs. He's going to use him not sparingly, but in a smarter sense. So, like, this is the same guy that had Raymond Felton, turned him into a fringe all-star in New York, and Jeremy Lin.
That was just going to mention.
Jeremy Lin. He got Jeremy Lin a $35 million contract.
And you're also missing one of your favorites in Steve Nash.
Yes.
To a 2-time MVP, and James Harden almost an MVP. It's a point guard effect that he's had. And the thing with Mike D'Antoni is he's never been able to get over the hump of winning a championship with his offense, but he has always turned his offenses into Western Conference Finals threatening teams. So I think the Rockets have become one of the most fun watchable teams in the NBA. And there's gonna be a lot of people say, how is it gonna work? I think you just gotta be a little patient and give it, as we always do here.
How is Durant gonna fit in? Like there was people talking about there's no
too many mouths,
too many cooks in the kitchen. They're not going to get shots.
All right, before we go, of course we have reactions. I mean, come on.
Is it all from Dan?
Who are we? No, I feel so bad for him. I do, man. And they're like, they might re-sign Blake. And then I told Dan, he calls, and the first thing I said is like, I'll still buy your tickets. if you want.
I'll go watch the first Clippers-Rockets game this season.
Man, I wonder what they do. The best one, which we'll throw in post. Well, I mean, of course. I mean, my intern knows.
This
SpongeBob,
is so
always SpongeBob.
funny.
Remember, they locked him in a house.
Yeah, this is a guy that was just getting hit with emojis left, right, and center to stay.
Fact.
He's alive.
He's alive. Dan has entered the building. We continue with the reactions. We have, oh man, being forced DeAndre to sign in 2015, only leave for better teams. Oh, it's just so mean. Next, we have James let Chris Paul bring the ball up. James.
The funny thing is they're already starting, but like James Harden lobbied hard for Chris Paul.
That was the reports, yeah. That say they,
You can post my tweet too.
what was the tweet? Was it better than the Chandler Parsons tweet?
No, that was bad.
DJ's trash, DJ's trash.
That was Dan's tweet. Wait, who said that to LeBron to the Clippers report fake news? Is that you?
I just tweeted it. It's on the
Oh, I gotta say, man, the only real news in this world left is Adrian Wojnarowski's Twitter. By the way, he drops the Chris Paul news and then sends one more tweet about the finalists, like how the trade will be finalized, and then says, thank you to the Vertical for all of what you've done for me in Yahoo Sports, and just drops the mic. And he's going to...
He also decided to go to the team that dealt him the worst losses.
The Rockets, yeah, they did that. That was a 3-1 lead, right? But Dwight played on that team. It's a new team.
I'm extremely excited for this.
I'm excited for Christoph Paul. All right, and then where's the last one? Yeah, this is true. For opting in, being real with manager, allowing to get pieces in return rather than nothing. Like he didn't just leave the team. He actually said, "Hey, man, I'm gonna go and sign with them. So get something for me. I'll opt into the contract." And look, now you got the Clippers have 19 guards. But hey,
they've got the depth they needed.
Look, Sweet Lou Williams. We're fine with Sweet Lou Williams. Jamal Crawford.
Patrick Beverley at points last season was.
He was
outstanding for the Rockets.
First team all defense.
Yeah, he was outstanding for them.
Cordy Lewis and Tony. Who said that to? Tony Allen used to scream at players, and he's first team all defense. Swipe a ball and say swipe to first.
Amazing.
All right, we'll be back with the greatest news of the world, and that is Phil Jackson.